Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping back into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from 5 Frog Margin. This is less malicious compliance than anal retentive compliance, but I kept my job and the villain got punished. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump right in. Some years ago, I got a job tankering a barge. A barge is basically a floating container that gets towed around port to port. Tankering means to load it with fuel or whatever product you carry and discharge it in another port. There were 2 other tankermen, but we worked 4 weeks on, 2 weeks home. So in my 4 weeks, I'd work 2 weeks with one of the other tankermen, 2 weeks with the other. I was pretty new to tankering, but I'd been working on boats for a few years and enjoyed it. There was little I liked more than getting on a ratty, rusty boat and chipping rust and painting until the boat was looking sharp. But I was a novice tankerman, and this boat was not looking sharp. Rust everywhere, storerooms a mess, dirty inside and out. The 2 other tankermen were of the opinion they were tankermen only, meaning they did nothing but tanker the barge, despite their job titles being deckhand and tankermen. They felt chipping and painting was beneath them and did no other work. Both of them were from down south, one a Cajun I'll call Gumbo and a black guy from Mobile I'll call Darnell. From my first trip, they both took a dislike to me. Darnell mostly because he was lazy and just wanted to hang out on the stern and fish. Once I started busting butt around the ship, he knew he had to start doing something, and he didn't like that. Gumbo, however, he really hated me. He considered himself barge captain, a title that didn't exist except in his mind, and saw me as a threat to his imaginary throne by, gasp, improving things. It wasn't just the boat. I got all the old load plans out of the places they were cramming them, organized them by fuel amount, and put them in a binder. That way, when the customer said, "Please load 68,840 barrels for us," I would flip to the closest previous load to that amount, and we would see how much to put in each tank to match that amount. As a result, loads started getting closer and closer to the requested amount, making the customer happy. Gumbo and Darnell tended to just wing it, but being new, I was a little anal retentive about doing it properly. When I am in unfamiliar territory, I tend to be anal retentive to the point of OCD to make sure I get it right. Also, I really did not want an oil spill on my watch. This went on for months, me getting more and more comfortable with tankering and annoying the other 2 by organizing storerooms, cleaning and organizing lockers, and generally making the boat a better place. Hell, I was even cooking. Strangely, there weren't too many accolades coming my way, and thanks to the assistant engineer Jim Bob, I found out why. You see, when Big Boss would come, it would tend to be when I was home. Gumbo and Darnell were bad-mouthing me behind my back, harping on my lack of experience, magnifying small errors, and concerned trolling that they were just trying to be safe. Even worse, all the changes I made, they took credit for. It wasn't OP cleaned out the paint locker, it was we got the paint locker cleaned out. Jim Bob often worked extra hitches and was a witness to everything. Jim Bob was a good guy, but from a poor town in Louisiana, dropped out of high school at 15, and was functionally illiterate. His illiteracy kept him from advancing, and as he was the only crew member to befriend me, I helped him out with his job, showing him all kinds of tips to streamline things, like putting an Excel spreadsheet on his work computer that allowed him to quickly track and monitor fuel and lube use. After a while, he began relaying to me what was happening behind my back. His exact words, "You and I are like brothers, so I say to you as a brother, they're out to get you." I kind of figured this was going on, as they had both begun to play the passive-aggressive game we in the industry call playing f***. So I knew I was odd man out. About this time, one of the barge's pumps went out, and the first thing that the mechanic said was it was due to a lack of maintenance, meaning tankermen weren't lubing, oiling, or greasing the pumps. At crew change, Big Boss came down to chew us all out, and like a fool, I said I had no idea we were supposed to do these things. Naturally, 100% of the blame came down on me for this, and my response was humility, asking what needed to be done. Big Boss made out a maintenance plan that the pumps would be serviced every 2 weeks, to be done by the returning tankerman, with a log of the work done to be completed. After what Jim Bob told me, I decided to adhere to compliance to the point of obsession. I would know those pumps so well, I could teach a course on them. As I had just returned that day, I went full on OCD, doing every check and measurement fluid level twice and logging it all. I asked Jim Bob what kind of grease and how many squirts to use. I counted the squirts and logged them. He had all the grease, so I had to get it from him. I logged all my maintenance in the logbook. Not only that, Jim Bob had all the grease in the engine room, so I had to get it from him. I logged that too. 1 tube, marine grade, number 2345 whatever. Jim Bob and I also went over the pump with a fine-tooth comb and found every one of the grease points. I added that list to the maintenance log. Funnily, I noticed that whenever I came back, the logbook, which was really just a handful of pages set aside in a crappy notebook we kept in the crew area, hadn't been updated since I'd left. It occurred to me I was the whipping boy. Gumbo and Darnell really thought they had me where they wanted me and didn't do F all on the barge. Months later, one of the other barges had a minor fire due to overheating about 3 days before I was supposed to arrive. Company hired a third party to check all maintenance fleet-wide, and ours didn't do well. Big Boss came down with notes to ensure we were following the protocol he laid down. Big Boss asked if we'd been doing the required maintenance. At this point, I'd been effed by these guys for over a year and had calmly practiced my response to any question. When Big Boss asked if we'd been following the protocol, I replied that I did it within a day of my arrival every 6 weeks. Darnell mentioned that the pumps were so dry when he arrived, it looks like they ain't been greased in months. I replied that I could guarantee they'd been greased at least once every 6 weeks, as I was the one that greased them. Then, Darnell made the mistake of saying something that set the whole situation aflame. Okay, well if you say you've been doing maintenance, okay, they just look to me like they're starved for oil. I get them the day I get back every time. I even log my work. Do you? Log it where? Where do you log it? Drunk Captain chimed in, I ain't never got a request to log anything. In the maintenance log Big Boss requested months ago. What? What log is that? The logbook tended to be ignored by the other two, and usually when I got back, it was buried under newspapers and XXX mags. I walked up to the tray underneath the TV and pulled it out. I casually flipped to the maintenance log section and showed them the places I had logged the work I'd done. As an added bonus, I actually started an entry for the next guy, so all he had to do was fill in numbers, stuff like name, date serviced, hours run, oil amount added, filters changed yes or no. Naturally, it was all blank. As an added bonus, I had made sure to not wash my hands before log entries, so I couldn't be accused of pencil whipping due to the greasy fingerprints. I sat quietly while Big Boss, Gumbo, Darnell, and the captain read the maintenance log, consisting of my entries and my entries only. Me and Jim Bob just watched each other expressionless. Both Gumbo and Darnell tried to cover for each other, claiming they'd seen the other doing the required maintenance, but Big Boss was no dummy. Where'd you get the grease and filters from? I see no records of transfer from the engine room to the barge. Darnell said, well, we got the grease from Jim Bob all the time. I've asked for at least 4 or 5 tubes, ain't I, Jim Bob? All eyes on Jim Bob. Jim Bob did the most amazing thing. Scowling at Darnell, he stood up, threw his coffee cup in the trash, and walked the 20 feet to his cabin. The slamming of the door was like a judge's gavel coming down. I took the dark path. Big Boss, I am sorry for any problems. After what happened in April, I have been obsessed with ensuring the pumps were properly maintained on my watch. I am happy to show you where all 17 grease points are and my routine for servicing them. I know the pumps backwards and forwards at this point. OP, that won't be necessary. I've seen all I need to. He snapped the logbook shut and told the captain, we'll talk later, and disembarked the vessel without another word. There's no sexy ending here. Gumbo got transferred to the punishment boat, the worst boat and barge in the fleet, and got written up for arguing with that captain on his first darn hitch. last I heard. We got a new tankerman, bizarrely a cousin of Darnell's, but I was pretty confident at this point and took the lead in training him. Darnell was a always be on the winning team kind of guy and let me take the lead. We wound up with a pretty good crew, hardworking, hard partying, just how I like it. When they hired a new captain, he was a guy that had come up with Big Boss, which is why he got the job. And he told Big Boss, you know, OP is about the only guy worth a crap on here. I still have the eval he wrote for me. It's on my darn LinkedIn page. The long story short on this one is always cover your butt. And yes, this story was absolutely malicious compliance. The best part being that you made a template entry for them, knowing full well that they wouldn't fill it in. It just made it look so much worse for them in the end. Well done, OP. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Hard Primer. We need a urine sample. Let's jump right in. I was a CRNA for many years in the military and civilian life. In that job, you handle narcotics and other controlled medications every day. There is a record of every dose you administer and every bit you waste. Turn in for random analysis. One day, I was sitting in my operating room minding my own business when another CRNA and an anesthesiologist come into my room and tell me that the clinical director of the department wants to see me. I'm curious but not concerned. I walk up to his office and am then escorted to the office of another department director and told to have a seat outside the office. I'm getting a bit nervous now, as there should be no reason for me to be here. I'm left cooling my heels while I'm imagining worst case scenario, a malpractice lawsuit, but have never caused injury or death in my entire career. I was actually pretty good being military trained. Now I'm working myself up to the point of physical illness, nausea. Eventually, I'm led into the office to find several people in suits and a senior anesthesiologist. They introduce themselves and are from the state's Impaired Physicians Division, and I'm being investigated for diverting controlled substances, stealing. My nausea and terror are immediately replaced by red-hot rage. I become calm and focused. Knowing you are innocent and being older and mature helps a lot. As a background, I have never had to take a narcotic for anything in my life except a Tylenol 3 as a teenager when my wisdom teeth were pulled when I was an enlisted troop. I smoked a lot of weed back then, it was the 70s, but gave that up when I was in my early 20s as urine is randomly tested. I am told my administration records for hydromorphone was incorrect. I'm really angry now and calmly ask, okay, now what? I'm escorted to a bathroom where I have to give a sample of urine while being watched. No problem. Back to the office, I'm asked for a hair sample. I pull my surgical cap off, showing my almost shaved head. I bicycled a lot and it was cooler. I say, we have a problem. I then, in front of the entire office, ask for the scissors. I drop my scrub pants and underwear, grab a handful of pubes, cut them off, place them on the foil used to ship it to the lab, and say, there's your mother effing hair. Anything else? They all look kinda shocked and go into an adjoining office, leaving me alone with one person from the state. I asked him if I was going back to work. He told me they were discussing that. I asked what he thought. He said by my reactions, he was pretty sure I wasn't stealing anything. They let me go and the case I was in was over by then, so I went home. I started a week of vacation the next day. I made the mistake of looking up drug testing stats, looking at false positive rates, and worrying about that for the week it took the test to come back. They came back clean. The problem was of my making, as we had changed to a computer charting system, and I had screwed up recording the drug in the recovery room as it was a different system. This triggered an investigation by a pharmacist to see if there was theft. She could have asked about charting instead of going right to the idea of theft. Fast forward a couple of months, I'm asked to go to a conference room where I see the controlled substance pharmacist and all of the anesthesia department heads. Since my run-in last time, I had become the most fastidious recorder in the department. The pharmacist starts off by saying my narcotic records are still not correct. I smiled the smile of righteous knowing she's wrong. I ask for the computer record she is holding. I look them over, hand them back and say, nope, you're reading them wrong. She wasn't looking at the post-op record where the diluted is charted in the recovery room. I hand it around to the rest of the table and every other person agrees with me. She goes pale and says, well, you also never turn in any waste, and that is an indicator of diversion. I said, I give everything I draw up. The chief of the department says, I give everything also, it's common. She's really not looking well now. I look straight at her and say, if there's another meeting like this or the last one, I will be bringing a lawyer, and I will be suing you personally. And trust me, I have the time and resources to do that. And I would have gladly spent the money to F with her at that point. My profession pays a very good salary, and I would have eaten ramen every day to finance a lawsuit. Got up and left. Because I'm a vindictive, petty, passive-aggressive dick. From that point, I turned in waste narcotics every day. 0.1 milliliters of every syringe I drew up. The OR pharmacist has to account for all that waste, and it made his life complicated. Eventually, he complained to my boss, who told me he understands what I was doing, told me my point was demonstrated, and asked me if I would stop it. I did. Several years later, the accusing pharmacist was demoted for missing a crapload of fentanyl and never reported it. I was hoping she had bone cancer, but I'll take that bit of karma. So what happened here was that OP was pulled into a room and accused of something without any true evidence that they were actually doing it. I understand the administration of narcotics in a hospital is a very important thing, but asking OP to maybe explain the way they record things instead of accusing them of taking them themselves was probably the best way to go on that one. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.